Star Trek Beyond was a bit worrisome at first. As the third film in a new series, even one that rebooted a very old series, well, there is always that third one is always the worst curse, right? Not to mention that J.J. Abrams, who gave us a spectacular first film and a very serviceable sequel, decided to step away as director to work on Star Wars, though that turned out great. A new director stepping in could go horribly wrong, and the announcement that Justin Lin was that director also worried me, as he's literally just known for The Fast and Furious, a series that I'm not very familiar with, but I do know is pretty far removed from Star Trek. This is after original replacement director Roberto Orci was removed from the project, and there were unsettling rumors of studio interference, with the studio not wanting the movie to be too Star Trek-y, and with a bigger focus on action and less on grandiose space exploration. Then the first trailer made it look like a fun movie, but had the strange choice of using the Beastie Boys' Sabotage. Though yes, there was a scene in the first movie that used the song, it seemed odd for a trailer, and the second trailer seemed less like a trailer and more like a delivery system for Rihanna's new song. So, as big of a Star Trek fan as I am, I'm going to see this opening day no matter what, but I did have some feeling that it probably would be a step down from the last two films. Glad to say I was wrong. Star Trek Beyond doesn't for a minute strike me as a cold studio-mandated sequel with a director that has no idea about the franchise. Instead, it strikes me as a loving tribute to the Star Trek of old, and dare I say, old-school Trekkers that have refused to embrace the new films should definitely check this one out, as it gives off a strong vibe of the original series. That is, the original television series, not the movie series. Just if it was done today, and with a huge budget. The feel of the film is very different under Justin Lin than it was under J.J. Abrams. The biggest change there is the film's more dark tone, and I don't mean in storytelling, but literal darkness. The last two films gave us an Enterprise that was a dazzling orgy of light, whereas this one seems almost gloomy by comparison, but this actually plays well into the storyline. As the film begins, Kirk and crew are 3 years into the 5-year deep space mission that they started at the end of Star Trek Into Darkness, and Kirk is feeling tired and considering leaving the mission to become a vice admiral. He even states in his opening log that everything feels episodic for him, which is really quite clever once I realize that 3 years into the 5-year mission is when the original Star Trek was cancelled. The crew goes into an uncharted nebula after a distress call about a stranded alien ship, but is lured into a trap sprung by Idris Elba's character Krall, who opposes Starfleet on seemingly philosophical grounds, though of course in Star Trek fashion there's a lot more to his character and motivation than just hating order and unity. The first film in the series, to me at least, focused greatly on Spock's characterization, while the second gave Kirk more love. But this one is more of an ensemble cast film, giving each and every cast member a moment to shine and playing off of new dynamics by splitting the crew into unusual pairs early on to create new dynamics. Kirk winds up with Chekhov, Spock and Bones are paired up, Uhura and Sulu, and Scotty and the new character Jayla, who is a refreshing new character that isn't just a typical action girl, but an interesting hybrid of innocence and wisdom, bravery and fear, and I would like to see more of her in the future. Despite the dire events, including the Enterprise being completely destroyed, and yeah, no, that's not a spoiler, it's been in pretty much every trailer, this is the most fun Star Trek perhaps ever, giving us enough action, humor, character development, and what I can only describe as fandom porn, with endless references and sly nods to the old continuity, and I have to say that the writers, of which Scotty actor Simon Pegg is one, must be huge fans of Futurama, because not only did I catch several references to the show, but the general feel reminded me of the Futurama movies that were released while the series was in limbo, and I mean that in the best way, as those were largely Star Trek satires and tributes as it is. The Enterprise destruction surprisingly is handled very early on, and is quite protracted, taking up a huge chunk of runtime, but it worked, because it gave us a good reason to have the characters split up into odd pairs, and also, let's face it, the last time we saw the ship blow up, in the search for Spock, it was the result of the crew doing it on purpose to defeat the enemy. But here, you see them all scrambling with all their might to save the ship and its crew, which is why the sequence goes on for so long. This is a film that I watched with an almost constant smile. It's not perfect, however. The one mar on the film is the cinematography, which is shaky. I don't often complain about shaky camera work. I only do this when I find it to be distracting and overused, or it doesn't fit well with the tone of the film. For example, the otherwise spectacular Captain America Civil War had this issue with the screen shaking even during the quieter scenes, and this film has the issue with the jitteriness actually making me dizzy at times, like watching a Michael Bay film, which is just fine and dandy for Bay films, but it doesn't really work for Star Trek. That being said, it's not the best Star Trek film ever, but it's fairly close, and I think it's an oddball marketing actually worked towards it. Let's just say that there's a very good reason that the Beastie Boys were so prominently featured in the first trailer. I give it a 9, with the caveat that it's better than Star Trek Into Darkness, which I also gave a 9. You know, hindsight is 20/20 and all.